Do you think it's necessary to start every sprint with each story fully specified? No. Just start. So I posted a prompt a few weeks ago. I said, hey, do you have any questions about Scrum? Put a question in the comment below and I'll respond in a new thread. So I got an interesting question. It's a common question. It goes like this. Do you think it's necessary to start every sprint with each story fully specified? A few patterns or anti-patterns lead to a phenomenon where teams are unwilling to start working on a product backlog item until it is fully specified. I'll share a few patterns that lead to this phenomenon. I've seen companies that structure their employees into groups with specific skills and authorities, such that work must pass through each group, like in a sequence. A product management office spends time on the product vision and the value proposition. A program management office then costs it all out and develops a timeline for delivery. Product analysts spend time to document all the requirements, and then implementation teams are sent huge lists of requirements, and maybe 8 or 18 months has passed. And rather than start the work, those implementation teams, unfortunately they're sometimes called Scrum teams, and maybe they use the words of Scrum like sprint and story. But rather than start the work, they're asked for estimates. Now remember, the program management office, they made a spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet has costs and timelines, and they want the implementers to now confirm the accuracy of those predictions. Now this kicks off a vicious and unproductive cycle. We said this work would take 4 months, will it? Well, I need more detailed requirements. Here, we wrote more detailed requirements. Will it be ready in 4 months? Well, maybe, but I need more information. And so on. The implementation work gets delayed until the PMO is content that they've received a proper estimate. Now, this is an example of analysis paralysis. And the remedy is just start. Get focused on making a good product instead of a good estimate. Also, I have seen companies produce a blame game that causes implementers to wait for perfect information. So here's an example. Imagine a group of people over here, and they're responsible for designing a mobile app, and another group over here for coding that app. Now let's say these two groups, they start with lightweight methods. Let's say the designer and programmer had a whiteboard and they sketch a wireframe together, and then the programmer goes and turns it into code. Great. But then maybe that feature really flops. Imagine the users really hate it. It's bad. Some companies will embrace that feedback, iterate on the feature, improve it. But some companies, they'll say, who screwed up? And they'll start pointing fingers. Now, in that corporate culture, I see people avoid accountability. And they do this, it's so strange. They do this by limiting their own personal scope of authority. The programmer might say, we can't start yet. The designers, they need to give us detailed requirements and better mock-ups and high fidelity animations of the screens and the user interactions. You see, they're waiting for perfect information. And so the designers, they get to work. They illustrate all the screens. They plan for every click or swipe or scroll, and they document their design in extreme detail, and they present beautiful slide decks to the managers. And when the designs are approved, they throw the information over the fence to the programmers. I see this all too often. But why would a programmer do this? Why disown all of those responsibilities? And the answer is to avoid blame. If the feature flops and the users hate it, the programmers can say, well, they designed it. And then the designers and programmers become adversaries. We built it right, they designed it wrong. Or we designed it right, but they built it wrong. Now, the remedy for this is to remember the other company. Remember, the other company reacted to the feedback, iterated on the feature, tested it further with end users, and improved it. Now, I could give other examples. Designers that wait for perfect lists of requirements, program managers who wait for perfect forecast of capital expenditures, customer service managers that wait for a perfect set of scripts and training manuals. Also, here's a third one. I have seen people invent detailed definitions of ready. They demand that a long checklist of preconditions be met before the implementers are allowed to start. This is argued to be more efficient because the programmers won't have to gather all the requirements. This way of thinking is deeply flawed. We need to think carefully about who must understand the requirements and how can they learn that information most effectively. The answer is that the implementers must understand the requirements, and they learn most effectively through direct interaction with the end users. Imagine this scenario. Let's say you're in a Scrum team and your product is to be a comic book of classic fairy tales. And maybe the next product backlog item says, "Scary wolf on front cover." As I say that, you're imagining the implementation, aren't you? Your brain maybe it just flashed the image of a book and on the cover is a wolf. Maybe the wolf is running or grinning or howling at the moon, right? That's awesome. That's what product backlog items are supposed to do. They inspire images of possible implementations. But whose job is it to determine precisely the design of the wolf? Is it the product owner who tells the developers what the wolf should look like? Should the business analysts go and write pages of requirements? How will the developers know what a scary wolf looks like? And the answer is the kids, the children, the end users. So maybe the developers could draft 8 or 10 different wolves, and they'll arrange a focus group at a nearby elementary school. And with feedback from those end users, they'll discover the requirements. And more than that, they'll have memory of direct response to various wolves and the conversations they had with kids while showing them these wolves. They'll have all of that experience to draw on as they then design and implement the wolf on the front cover. And so if you're with a team who suffers any of these anti-patterns, remember, the remedy is to ensure there's a direct feedback loop between implementers and end users and give space within every sprint to enable the design, implementation, and testing of each product backlog item. Don't reinforce patterns that cause valuable work to be deferred or delegated to others outside the Scrum team. In good Scrum teams, I would expect to see a bias toward action. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this.